Noam Chomsky discussed how both political parties in America have shifted to the right, but when it comes to the Republican Party, he states that they've basically gone off the political spectrum. Take a look.
The spectrum is broad, but in an odd sense. The spectrum is basically from center to extreme right, way off the spectrum. So the Republican Party about 20 years ago basically abandoned any pretense of being a normal political party. In fact, distinguished, respected conservative commentators from the American Enterprise Institute, right-wing think tank, like Norman Ornstein, described the Republican Party as a radical insurgency, which has abandoned parliamentary politics. They just don't want anything to happen. Their only policies are don't do anything or bomb. And that's not a political party. It's what happened is that the party, during the whole neoliberal period, both parties shifted to the right, as everywhere in the world, and the Republicans just went off the spectrum. They became so dedicated to the interests of the extreme wealthy and powerful that they couldn't get votes. So they had to turn to other constituencies, which are there, but were never politically mobilized. Christian evangelicals, nativists who are afraid they're taking our country away from us, people who are so terrified that they have to carry a gun into a coffee shop, and that's their base, essentially. And when you look at just take a look at the primaries. I mean, any candidate who has a semblance of rationality is not even competing. So that's the Republicans. The Democrats have shifted to the right as well. Today's mainstream Democrats are pretty much what used to be called moderate Republicans. Somebody like Eisenhower, for example, would be considered way out on the left. So, for example, Eisenhower strongly made it very clear, as he put it, that anyone who questions the programs of the New Deal is just not part of American political life. Well, by now that's a left-wing program. It's basically Bernie Sanders' program. Yeah. That's Eisenhower. So the spectrum just is, it's true that it's broad, but in a very strange sense.
So I really like Noam Chomsky because he's one of the few people in this country that can really articulate the shape that our country is in and be actually accurate. Contrary to all the political pundits, it's not the case that just the Republicans have moved to the right and a lot of them will say that Democrats have moved to the left. That's completely false. Both parties have moved to the right. This is demonstrably true. Now, when you look at politicians such as Hillary Clinton, such as Barack Obama, you'll see that these are not the Democrats from the Jimmy Carter era. These are basically moderate Republicans. They may be socially liberal, but from a fiscal standpoint, they're very, very conservative. And when it comes to war, they're warmongers. They love war. That's the reason why Barack Obama, he hasn't ended the war in Iraq, even though he campaigned on it. Now, furthermore, the rise of progressives is one of the reasons why political pundits will state, incorrectly so, that the Democratic Party has moved to the left, because we have this caucus of progressives that has about 70 members. But the fact of the matter is that these people have not moved at all. These are the pro-FDR, pro-New Deal, Keynesian, economically inclined individuals who just stayed exactly where they are while the rest of the Democratic Party shifted to the right. So it's not the case that they're on the far left. Now, it may look as though they're on the far left just because with respect to everyone else on the political spectrum being so far to the right, well, they look like they're super far to the left. But in actuality, when it comes to the rest of the world and where they stand, I mean, progressives are right where the social democratic parties in Europe stand, even though they've moved to the right as well, as Noam Chomsky also noted. Now, the implications of this are frustrating because basically every election, when we're voting for a president, we're forced to choose between either a moderate Republican or a far-right extremist. I mean, if Hillary Clinton becomes the Democratic nominee, that's what we're going to be choosing. We're going to be choosing a moderate Republican or a far-right extremist Republican. We're choosing between two conservatives. If Bernie Sanders becomes the Democratic nominee, then we actually get to choose between a real liberal, a real progressive, someone who is part of the FDR, Jimmy Carter, New Deal coalition. So when we talk about money in politics, sure, it's the case that one of the reasons why both parties shifted to the right is because they've been caving to business interests and the billionaire class, whose interests are inherently conservative. They like these neoliberal policies. Now, when I say neoliberal, I don't mean liberal in the American sense. I mean conservative. I mean liberal in the classic sense that when you carry out neoliberal policies, you deregulate and you get government out of the economy to a larger extent. So now getting money out of politics, that's going to solve a portion of the problems, but what we really need is electoral reform. The two-party system doesn't work. We live in a single-member district winner-take-all system. So that means that the winner's going to win it all and the loser gets nothing. We are not proportionally represented. So this disenfranchises a lot of people because there's a thing called Duverger's law where it forces there to be just two parties in these types of winner-take-all systems. Now, the upshot of Duverger's law and being a two-party system is that those two parties race to the center typically. So you're not going to have room for more socialist-oriented policies or more far-right extremists. Unless in this case, if the entire political spectrum moves to the right, then you get far-right, but you don't get socialism. So it makes it the case that the political positions that are feasible for candidates are very, very limited. It's going to be centrism, and that's going to be what gets you elected. So that's what they run to. So we need electoral reform. We need a proportional representation system. And without electoral reform, we'll still be disenfranchised. We'll have to pick between the lesser of two evils every election. And I'm so tired of doing that. But at the same time, I'm not going to waste my vote by voting for a third-party candidate because they don't win. And in some cases, they actually cost Democrats the election, which I'd rather see Democrats in office because I'm of the opinion that the worst Democrat is better than the best Republican. So, we need electoral reform, and it's something we've needed forever.